Greetings sailors and welcome back to World of Warships and this game from the last ranked season. So we're going back, what, 2.5, 3 months? It actually seems like longer somehow, but of course the rate at which we get patches in World of Warships means that, you know, I could probably make some joke there about dog years and human years, but anyway, never mind. I'd actually have to then think about trying to be funny, and we all know how well that usually goes. So, anyway, this is General Motors. I think possibly a reference to the American car manufacturer, maybe. And he's in the Fiji, which is, I think, generally acknowledged to be one of the better, if not among the best, of the British cruiser line, alongside the Minotaur and, well, the Belfast. And the enemy team actually does have a Belfast, so that could be a problem depending on how good that player is. Now, that was one of the issues with the last ranked season being locked to tier 7 generally. It wasn't so much the regular tier 7s, of which there's quite a nice variety. There's some very nice strong ships at tier 7, but there are some also very strong premiums at tier 7, and the Belfast in particular has just got a very good combination of consumables alongside its other characteristics that makes it particularly suitable. So they've basically lost one destroyer already. They've got 2 Shiratsus on their side, and one of them decided to try and go to A. And instead of kind of hanging back a little and spotting and then disengaging when it turns out the entire enemy team is there, instead he tried to go in the cap circle, and now he's run aground. The other Shiratsu, the one that's come here to B, yeah, he's not really much use either. That's not a good start. That's not really how you want to show yourself off as a good player, is to make torpedo drops like that. No, there was very little danger to the enemy team from that torpedo drop, and quite a lot of danger to General Motors. Half of that, more than half of that torpedo spread went into an island. So I don't know what was going on there then. We're not maybe going to expect great things from that destroyer captain. So the other Shiratsu has of course died, and so with them being a ship down already, that's not a good start. That's really not a good start, especially with Mortars having nearly eaten 2 or 3 friendly torpedoes. Not that they would have been very friendly at that point. They have, however, got a cap, and this is far from a disaster. It's just not a good start. So if they can come back from this, if they can dish out the damage and hold their ground, defend the cap point, get the kills, easy. It's just a matter of somehow bringing together 7 total strangers and getting some semblance of teamwork out of them, which, as we all know from playing online games, is it's such a common thing, and therefore it will definitely happen. Yes. Yeah, I don't know what I'm going for there. I don't know if that was supposed to be like sarcasm or just, I don't know, a cry of despair from having played years and years of World of Tanks and Warships. So the other Shiratsu's run himself aground in front of the Gneiser now, and that's not so good. They've also got some ships pressing round from the other side. Now, depending on which way you look at this, you know, it's either a successful pincer movement or it's the enemy team disastrously splitting their forces. This is one of those times when the history books are written by the winners, so we'll see how this one works out. For this Pensacola, though, which is not a great choice for ranked to begin with. I mean, it has good guns, but it's not really got a lot else that contributes to ranked. Well, this player's just... He's not, like, there are other ships that have come around this side. The Miyoko's further back. The Scharnhorst will be coming round this way shortly. Possibly the Belfast too. But this Pensacola's just charging in face first. And this is giving General Motors ample opportunity to get lots of broadside shots. And even when he starts to angle, Motors is still getting those superstructure pens. So this Pensacola's just throwing his ship away. But in a way that's a nice trade, because they've had a destroyer that ended up throwing his ship away, so at least they're even on ships at this point. So that Atlanta looks like he's in trouble. The Akatsuki's come round this side, and their Nagato, rather. I said Miyoko there. I don't have a Miyoko. Their Nagato has been sunk, so they're a battleship down. And the Nagato in particular, losing that, that's not good news. That is a battleship's worth of victory points, and also the Nagato has a lot of firepower. The Germans have the survivability, which is, I think, one of the reasons why they're rather popular, and the Tier 7 German battleships, especially with the torpedoes, you know, you've got that extra utility there. But the Nagato had quite a lot of firepower going for it, so a Nagato played well in the Tier 7 last ranked season. Was a real asset, but not so much the Nagato on this team. So, glancing to the south, we see that there's obviously been some rather heavy engagement going on. I mean, they've taken out one of the enemy destroyers and the Gneisenau, but obviously the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau had a bit of a torpedo exchange, and so he's very low health. That Shiratsuyu is also very, very low health, and it's only really Mortars and the Atlanta that have got any hit points to speak of. So it looks like the enemy team, what remains of them, is now pressing aggressively towards B. And this isn't, you know, this is shaped up to be, despite the less than optimal start and despite Mortars eating almost a couple of torpedoes from that Shiratsuyu, from his own Shiratsuyu, it's going better, but they're still on the back foot here because the Scharnhorst and the Shiratsuyu are both very low health. And if you give the Scharnhorst enough time, you can recover some of that health, but as it will have been heavy damage from torpedoes, you can only get back so much. So the Scharnhorst is going forwards into B. We can assume that the destroyers may be there with him as well. Motors himself got spotted trying to turn round into this position, and he kind of mucked it up a bit and ran himself aground. But I think his intent was to just bring his front round and then get in a position to torpedo. I'm not sure why he wanted the front of his ship round for this, though, because now he's got to awkwardly reverse. If they come round the island, he'll have to awkwardly reverse. Ideally, you'd want to like drop smoke and break contact, or else sit in the smoke and hope somebody else would spot for you. But no, this is, I don't know, maybe he wasn't quite sure what to do next, and he wanted obviously to make a drop on the ships as they press round, but I don't know. So there's some bad news in that the Belfast was still in A, and so they have lost the remaining destroyer to that Belfast, and they lost the Scharnhorst to the Miyoko. I'm not entirely sure how the Miyoko had shots over at the Scharnhorst from where he is, but apparently he did. So that's the third kill for that Miyoko. He's been doing rather well for himself. So now they're all concentrating fire on this Atlanta, who, being an Atlanta, isn't going to last too much longer. And that's very bad news for General Mortars, because that leaves him alone versus 4 enemy ships. So he put out another spread of single torps, but this is the first actual hit he's gotten, and it looks like he's getting flooding, so whatever he hit is now in trouble. But he's got a Belfast to his west, he's got these 3 enemy ships coming in from the east, the enemy have the cap points, but it's not all bad news. Some of these enemies are quite low health, so the Akatsuki, if we can get another hit on him and doesn't get completely obliterated, that should be a fairly easy kill. So there we go. And that Scharnhorst is still flooding. But as it turns out, he gets denied the kill because the Miyoko actually clips him with a shell. Oops. So that really was like the bulk of his damage, and then the Miyoko just happened to catch his superstructure when it was low enough to outright kill him. So yeah, I mean, he was dead anyway, but it's not so good for that Miyoko score screen. However, we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, this Miyoko has set him on fire twice. The Belfast is coming in from the other side, but crucially, neither of these cruisers have been firing AP at him. They're both firing HE. That really might make all the difference, because AP would have just melted him. Now he puts out more torps on the Belfast, but the Belfast stops on the steps on the brakes rather, quick enough to avoid those, but he's now broadside and more or less a stationary target at very close range, so it's going to come down to who runs out of hit points first. And the answer is going to be the Belfast, fortunately, because he was about 600 hit points and like maybe a couple of seconds away from burning out himself with the 2 fires that he had burning there. So that performance, that effort, netted General Mortars a solo warrior, which is not something you see very often. He also obviously got a high caliber out of it because he was doing quite a lot of damage there. But he wasn't the only one on the team that was doing something. I mean, the Scharnhorst had 2 kills and probably did the lion's share of the damage to the enemy Scharnhorst, or was it Gneisenau? I forget which. But of the rest of the team, I mean, some of the performances were really not very creditable, and the destroyers in particular still managed to, you know, not be last, but yeah, some of the team just didn't do a lot, and some of the team were almost more of a hazard to their own team than the enemy team. But in the end, General Mortars kept fighting, and he was able to pull that through, and it was a real stroke of luck that those cruisers at the end there were both firing HE, because those 8-inch guns on the Myoko with AP could have just melted him. They could have just blatted him out the water. So sometimes these situations, like, it must have seemed to Mortars fairly early on that they were on the losing end of this game, but sometimes these situations can be turned around, and the thing that turns them around is that people just keep trying regardless of how it seems. And most of the time it won't work. And in this case, it nearly didn't work because he nearly burned out. But there was just enough of a stroke of luck with those enemy cruisers completely misplaying that it instead turned out to be a very nice win. I haven't seen many solo warrior replays sent to me. In fact, I've just not seen many on YouTube generally. So yeah, that was pretty good. It's maybe slightly easier to get in a ranked game than a regular game, with there being fewer ships to start with, but still, that was a very good result. So hopefully you have enjoyed this this callback to a couple of months ago and this very good Fiji game, and if you have, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.